Now, we know that you come from Surrey. What we don't know, and I'd like to know first of all, is your film-going habits from early on.
I went to the cinema. I went to Saturday Morning Pictures. It was a kind of Saturday cinema club. We didn't get a TV for ages. We had to go to the neighbour's house and watch TV.
And did you think at that stage, did it give you the ambition to be an actor?
No, I never had any ambition to be an actor. I had no way of thinking about being an actor. I didn't know anyone who was an actor. There was no precedent for it round our way. I didn't know that you could... I made no link between what I saw in the cinema and anything that might involve me ever.
Nonetheless, you went to drama school, obviously. So.
I did go to drama school. I went to the Guildford School of Dance and Drama, as it was then called, which we used to call the Guildford School of Prance and Murmur. Although I didn't attend very regularly. I spent the whole time trying not to attend and just waiting to get busted, frankly. Really. I mean, I just thought in a minute someone will tap me on the shoulder and ask me what I was doing there. I had no intention, as I say, of being an actor for money or as a living or anything. I did it because the first girl who ever paid any attention to me suggested that I do that. And she could have said astronaut and I'd have given it a shot, you know what I mean?
So you went to the Everyman Theatre eventually, and also the National Theatre, and worked a great deal in theatre before you did much in television or indeed film. I mean, that comes, you know, a little bit later on.
Yeah.
Was it something you always had in mind, or were you frankly satisfied enough with the theatre work?
No, I never had it in mind. It's either a good thing or a bad thing, but I had spectacularly low expectations. So everything has been a kind of bonus. Everything's come as a surprise, really. I really didn't... I mean, you know, I am someone who, when I auditioned for drama school, I'd been to an all-boys school, and I was tall enough not to have to play girls, which was a result. But boys did play girls. So when I auditioned for drama school, for instance, I thought I'd do one girl and one boy. And for my girl, I did Eliza Doolittle. People don't do this, you know, it's not... You know. And for my boy, because my mate Gavin had the stopwatch and it said 3 minutes of Shakespeare, and it had a speech which began with, "I left no ring with her," which, you know, we figured that's a boy. It turns out, in fact, it's one of the most famous female roles in Shakespeare. It's Cesario is, in fact, Viola dressed as a boy. So, in effect, I did 2 girls' speeches for my drama audition, and the bloke said, "That was very interesting. Why did you choose to do 2 women's parts?" And I was thinking, Gavin, you know. So that was the sort of state I was in. So the idea of being on TV or anything hadn't, you know, I had no plans or no idea that you could do that. And I worked in the theatre for nearly a decade before anybody put me in front of a camera or anything.
But you did have a series of bit parts before you came to the leading roles later on, including a Pink Panther film.
How dare you? I did, yeah. I was in the Pink Panther film. I can't remember. I had a line. I had to push Herbert Lom in a wheelchair. And I can't remember, I can't remember what my line was. I had a line in The Bitch, which was cut. Oh. So don't go looking for it, because it's not there.
And Eye of the Needle as well?
Eye of the Needle was a Donald Sutherland, Kate Nelligan movie. I was RAF squadron leader Blenkinsop, for real. And I had a lot of very camp extras who were supposed to be RAF, my squadron. And I had to say things like, "The Hun will be coming in at 6,000 feet, and we will come under the cloud cover," you know, so that sort of talk. And they'd all be standing with their backs to the camera going, "Oh, my dear, God." which was not encouraging.
2001 from Lawless Heart, which is a very interestingly structured film about the events after a funeral. Set in a seaside town. I mean, I know it was shot on the Isle of Man. I'm not sure, is it meant to be on the Isle of Man?
Nothing's meant to be on the Isle of Man. Tom Hunsinger and Neil Hunter, who made that film, have have a system whereby you go to their kitchen and they put a tape recorder on their kitchen table and lots of coffee. And every time you go, there's a different actor. And they tell you the scene and the story, and then you improvise it for them. And then you do that several times. And from those tapes, they build the script rather brilliantly. In that case, that's because I once saw on a bus stop a series of boxes to tick. It said, do you have trouble sleeping? Yep. Do you drink lots of liquids? Yep. Do you feel, there were all these kind of things. I ticked them all, and then my mother said maybe I had a heart murmur. And somebody else said maybe I had low blood pressure. Anyway, I went to the doctor, and I saw this young lady doctor, and I said, look, can you eliminate these things for me? Have I got a heart murmur? Have I got an interrupted heartbeat? She said, what I have to ask myself is what I'm looking at a presentation of depression? And I was in such bad shape at the time that my reaction to that was to be profoundly flattered at the suggestion that I might be anything as posh as presenting depression.
Well, the decade continued with a great piece of TV writing, actually, Paul Abbott's State of Play. For which you won a BAFTA for Best Actor. David Yates directed. David Yates will be emerging as a bit of a theme through these clips. Yep. But at this stage, just to talk about TV drama, which this was 6 episodes, very complex and subtle and utterly gripping. I mean, there is an argument that some of the more compelling writing has been for television rather than for film recently.
Hilary Bevan-Jones, who produced State of Play, she managed somehow to sneak it through the marketing people. It didn't have any of the things that was supposed to recommend it to anyone, and it was supposed to be too complex for the audience. It was supposed to be too complicated. The audience, of course, craved such things, and were delighted when they finally got something that was intelligent, like State of Play. And I think that was a great deal to do with its success. It was a heroic moment for journalists, which was very good as far as the reviews were concerned. And I got several calls and letters from journalists saying, "Can I come and work for you?" I think they were very grateful that it's in the same way as that when actors are portrayed in plays and things, they're often brought on to indicate how, you know, how the human character can deteriorate. You know what I mean? They're not often brought in a heroic fashion. And the same with journalists, and I think they were grateful for that.
But that kind of exhilaration that we're seeing there that is something that you do sometimes return to in roles.
Somebody once wrote about me, that nobody does tired like Bill Nighy. And I was... I remember, because the thing about being in films and television particularly is that everyone's sort of semi-exhausted all of the time, but they don't tell you that. They don't tell you that, and you will have to achieve all these things whilst being semi-exhausted. And I used to be frightened of being tired on camera. This has got nothing to do with your question, as you may have spotted. But I used to, and then I used to sort of think, well, okay, I'll just be tired. And it got to be quite exciting, just being tired in close-up. Being tired in mid-shot, you know, just being tired, you know. It was kind of thrilling. I'm on national television and I'm tired, and it's okay, you know. But occasionally you just jack it up in case anybody's fallen asleep or something. I don't know. I am quite energized. I mean, I think I'm quite energized. I have people that come up and say things like, you know, it must be okay for you because you're so mellow. Well, you know, give me a break. I mean, that's not how I experience things. I am most of the time wired, but I give the impression, apparently, of being relaxed.
Music is going to turn up again as a theme in several of the films. 1998, you made a film called Still Crazy about a band who had disbanded and decided to get back together again some decades later,
yeah,
with Timothy Spall and Jimmy Nail.
Yeah.
And it was a film very well received, particularly at festivals in America. I mean, the Americans really loved it as well. Now, did Richard Curtis decide then that Billy Mack in Love Actually was he born out of that?
I don't know. I've never discussed it with him. I think he probably thought he's done that, therefore we'll get somebody who hasn't.
But presumably the role in Love Actually was written for you.
No, it wasn't written for me at all. It was written for somebody else. And I've never, and they did afterwards, they said, do you want to know who it was for? And I said, don't tell me. because I didn't want to know. But no, it absolutely wasn't written for me. I had no, I didn't expect to get it. They could have had anyone, you know, they could have had a rock star.
Well, won you BAFTA for Best Supporting Actor as well. So, but when Richard Curtis talked to you about it, when you did get the part, whoever might have been up for it beforehand, I mean, what was the brief?
What he was interested in was, you know, we've never had aging rock stars before. Rock and roll is relatively new, you know, relatively young. And these guys are, there is a great deal of affection for old rockers. People, people smile at the mention of their names because they're still standing or something, because we grew up with them, or because they're funny. And but Richard liked the idea of someone who would say the thing you weren't supposed to say. When I die, if I get an obituary, it will say, "Hey kids, don't buy drugs, become a pop star," and they give you them for free. Children shouted at me in the street. I once was going through immigration from Canada to the USA, and it was very early in the morning. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. There was no one there but me and 4 guys, immigration guys in booths. One with a huge moustache, Mexican-looking guy, and I thought, don't give me him. And I have a drug conviction from like ancient times, and I thought any minute now someone's going to bust me for this, and you know, and he pointed at me, so I had to go towards him. And as I walked towards him, he said, "Hey kids, don't buy drugs." And when he said drugs, I was like, "What? No, I'm not." And he said, "Become a rock star, people give you them for free. Am I right? Am I right?" And it was like, "Thank you. Thank you, thank you." So it got me through customs.
Now, the next excerpt we're going to show is something, again, directed by David Yates. What do you like so much about the way he works?
David Yates is completely and utterly brilliant. He is courteous endlessly, which I prize as high as anything else. He appears to be a soft-spoken pussycat from St. Helens. He is, in fact, relentless and lethal, but to good purpose. He is fiercely bright and intelligent and cleverer than I am, which is what you require from a director. And he creates, I know this sounds very cliched, but he creates a world. And all the 4 things I've done with him, one of them is Harry Potter, but the other 3 are very different, what State of Play and the ones you're going to see, are very different worlds. And he absolutely, tonally, he is very, very sharp. He can make it, and he can say things which actually help, which is not that common amongst directors. And it's not. Directors have various talents, but they don't always include knowing how to help you do stuff, and he really can.
So now we'll come on to The Girl in the Cafe from 2005, scripted by Richard Curtis.
Yeah.
Now, I can't believe that this wasn't written for you.
Well, I hesitate to say this in public, but it probably was, yeah. I think it was written for me. It was, yes, it was.
It was.
I think he even said that. So I was very grateful, and I was grateful to play this kind of role, which was a man, rather than anything brash or sort of extra. I could play somebody who was isolated and sort of disabled by self-consciousness, which is an area it turned out, I am interested in.
And he's a civil servant, Lawrence,
Yeah.
who spends a little bit of time when he can get away from the department or the ministry or whatever it is, in a cafe.
Yeah.
And you also, I think, spend quite a lot of time in cafes.
Yeah, Richard Curtis never hang out with writers. I mean, there is a scene in The Girl in the Cafe where I am in a... I said one night to Richard, he said, after work, he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to eat." He said, "Where are you going to eat?" I said, "I'm going to go to a Thai restaurant. I go to this Thai restaurant." He said, "Well, who will you be going with?" I said, "I don't go with anybody." And he said, "Really?" I said, "No, I just, because my wife was away working, I was going on my own." He said, "What, do you just go on your own?" I said, "Yeah, I go with a book, and I've done it all my life." And he said, and so then the next day, there's a sheet of paper, and it says Thai restaurant, man, Lawrence with book. So they build it, and then suddenly you're on a location in a Thai restaurant, because they always put it in.
It's a play that has got quite a lot of content as well in it, too. I mean, it's obviously a very strong, powerful study of this solitary man and the relationship with the girl he meets in the cafe. But there's also current affairs insofar as that they go to a G8 meeting, and there's a fair amount of content if you want to find it there.
Yeah, it was the movie of the Make Poverty History campaign. The Make Poverty History campaign, which was arguably one of the most successful charitable pushes of all time, was another attempt to stop people dying from extreme poverty completely unnecessarily and preventably. Richard Curtis is one of the few people you could turn to and actually say, that person there has saved millions and millions and millions and millions of people's lives. You could say that, and you would be right. What I like about the movie is the fact that he has perfectly integrated certain information which he wants to deliver into that other thing he does, which is romantic comedy. So, and it is successfully integrated, in my view. It wasn't terribly well received here, because we are incredibly sensitive about such things. It was received very differently in America, where they don't have the problem that we have. If you do attempt to help, people find it very suspicious. There is a degree of cynicism about it here. I don't understand it, so I can only speculate. I don't really understand it. But I think this was a beautifully successful way of delivering certain information.
Actors passing through, there's Richard Curtis, obviously, David Yates. I mean, there are other people who you've worked with more than once. Stephen Polikoff, I suppose, would also spring to mind. Yeah. And I guess that for Stephen Polikoff, there's a particular kind of melancholy and sense of the past, obviously, that he deals with a great deal, that he feels that you interpret very well.
I've worked with him 3 times now, and I enjoy working with him a great deal. He also says stuff that I understand. You never know how people are going to be, as we discussed directors earlier. You know, when I first worked with him, and the first morning's work I ever did for Stephen Polikoff, I had to tell George V that the whole Russian part of his family had been slaughtered in a basement. That was my job. And I went in and I did it once, and you never know how people direct. And Stephen came over and said, "That was very good," which is always a good, you know what I mean? That's a good way to start. And then he said, "Don't wiggle your eyes about so much," which was a great relief to me, because I know how to do that. I know how to not wiggle my eyes about so much. But you'd be surprised what people say. You know, they kind of, you know, there's sort of psychiatry comes into it, and I'm lost. So he's a practical man. He's also, you know, he is, as they say, touched by genius, and it's a great honour to work with him.
Now, we're going to move on to Notes on a Scandal in 2006, which is a very different, very much a story in the present, directed by Richard Eyre, who you presumably worked with on stage.
I had worked with him, sorry. Yes, I had worked with him on stage. I worked with him, he co-directed Skylight by David Hare, which I did on the stage. And I worked under him, as it were, when he was the artistic director of the National Theatre. And so, yes, I was familiar with him.
And Notes on a Scandal is a very dark tale. I'm actually literally a dark film a lot of the time as well. And quite unusual to get such strong drama in a contemporary setting. Yes.
I've never seen it, actually. So I can't, you know, but I read the script, and it was very good. But it's one of the ones I've managed to completely avoid.
Why do you not watch them?
Because it's unbearable, because I am squeamish in the extreme about the sight of myself or the sound of myself, but most importantly, the acting is what I can't bear. I just can't bear it. I know it's, you know, I don't know what other relationship you could possibly have with it. I see it, and all I see is the disparity, the violent disparity between what I had in mind and what's arrived on the screen. And I'm not kidding or anything. I'm not being anything attractive like Modest. This is seriously messed up, you know what I mean? But I'm also, I don't think I'm mistaken either. I mean, I know I'm not mistaken, but I'm just very grateful. I've got used to the idea that other people are. But they're not actually mistaken. They just receive it, presumably, in a different way. They don't know what was going on in my mind, so they don't experience any sense of loss. You know?
Well, take it from me that I mean, I know you won't look at it, but actually, your performance in Notes on a Scandal is fantastic, I think.
Thank you.
And it's I think it gives a lot more. No, I do.
No,
I do,
no,
I
I'm
do,
kidding. I'm kidding. Okay.
I do.
No, I know. I believe you.
Oh, good.
Nearly.
Now, of course, there are also the thing we haven't mentioned are the big blockbusters, the Pirates and the Underworld series, in which you are, rather sadly, I think, hidden behind being a squid or a... What is Victor in the Underworld? Is he a vampire?
Victor is king of the vampires.
Oh, yes. We'd be so desiccated by that stage that it's difficult to tell.
How dare you? No, I'm desiccated. I'm covered in latex. Let's get real. No, a squid. Well, I was quite happy because it meant I could watch the movie. You know, I quite happily watch both Pirates of the Caribbean movies because what are you going to say? I'm a terrible squid. Get over it. But so I didn't have any problem with that. And I am a vampire. Yeah, I'm very happy with being a vampire. I do quite like it when it gets sort of stupid. If you spend a day hissing, it's like an honourable thing to be doing. It's sort of, you're on the side of the angels somehow. I always feel it's kind of, my daughter's shaking her head. What does he mean? Sorry, man. But it's I can't make the link either. But I mean, it's there. It's just like you're doing something sort of stupidly useful in a sort of stupid way. And the thing about vampire movies is that the crew find it difficult to keep a straight face. You know, I mean, if you are doing that for like 8 hours a day with another guy doing it in your face, you know, as soon as the director says cut, everybody falls apart because it's just like, because it's so stupid.
So finally, Harry Potter
yeah.
has called, and I suppose the question is, what took it so long?
Yes, quite. Thank you, Francine. I was beginning to wonder that myself. I was, for a while, going to be the only English actor of a certain age who wasn't in Harry Potter. You know, and now I am, so I can't even moan anymore. Yeah, I play a wizard. I'm a very important wizard. I'm a minister of magic. And I get a very good wig. I think I'm allowed to tell you that. It's very long. It's a very long wig, and that's about as much as I'm prepared to say. I had a really nice time working with Daniel and Rupert and David Yates, who was marvellous.
Well, we'll look forward to that. Bill Nighy, thank you for your life in pictures.
Thank you very much.